What's going on there, guys? Good evening. It's the Earthmaster here on this beautiful Thursday night, August 25th, 2022. It's about 8:18 p.m. California time. Latest quake looks like a 1.9 earthquake around the Alaska region. Seen a little bit of uptick in movement up there, including some deeper earthquakes. Notice the rings raised off the globe here, indicating some of that deeper activity. Also, a little bit of movement around Yellowstone. Let's go ahead and check out the latest activity here from the USGS map, showing the last 24 hours of earthquake activity, including one earthquake. Well, this is actually Idaho. Got a 3.7 coming in near Stanley, Idaho. This area has been relatively quiet. Over the past, man, it almost seems like the past 3 weeks or so, maybe a month or more, in terms of the area that we had normally prior seen some swarming at pretty much at the northern end of the Sawtooth Fault system here. This is the area that's seen the 6-pointer back in 2019. So aftershock sequences pretty much came to a complete halt here over the past month or so, but it looks like things may be kicking back up in terms of seismic unrest here around the Sawtooth Fault system. So for right now, 3.7 in the Idaho area, but I expect this little quake here to stir up the aftershock sequences with many more smaller microquakes throughout the days ahead. We'll see how that progresses, though. Also over in Wyoming, kind of in an odd area, well outside of Yellowstone. I'd call that south central Wyoming area, near the Green Mountains. Close to the Seminole Mountains, I guess. Kind of looks more like towards the Ferris Mountains. A whole range of mountains out here. But if we zoom in, we can kind of get a little glancing view of where this activity is kind of striking at. We do have a 3.3 earthquake at 5 kilometers deep here up against this mountain range. Not sure about the fault systems that run through here, but technically speaking, geology wise, there should be fault systems that run up through here, but USGS not showing right up against this mountain range. But kind of an odd little earthquake, you know, and it's coming after well, this earthquake struck here at when was that? A little bit earlier this afternoon time frame. Looks like no, take that back, 8:26. Current UTC time is late, right? 3:20 right now on the 26th. So this earthquake just struck within about the last hour and a half or so in Wyoming, followed up by the movement there in Idaho. I think one thing we've noticed here across the western portion of the states is the increase in activity pretty much inland, well inland, away from the plate boundary. So that could be a good sign, good signal of some built-up strain and pressure out here along the plate boundary itself, right? Kind of working its way inland. Now this is up against, if you want to talk about the North American Craton region, and we can type that in real quick. We'll go ahead and go with the North American. Not crouton, but craton. Croutons are pretty good, though, by the way. This map right here I kind of like to use here. Kind of shows an area of the North American plate that has been relatively stable, in the past 600 million years or so. And that kind of jumps up right against the Yellowstone area. And towards that area where we're seeing the earthquake there in south central Wyoming just a short time ago. So things kind of kicking up, building up here, right up against here. And that's somewhat typical. We see that quite often, actually. And a lot of times we can see earthquake activity follow this line of movement here, or this outline of the North American Craton. But not always. Because of all the oil fracking operations and injection wells, we get earthquakes now well into the North American Craton throughout Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas area. But yeah, it's kind of a neat little article. It's been a little while since I did a little update video on it, a little bit more in-depth video. Maybe we'll do that possibly tomorrow or so. But tonight, definitely got some activity showing up here along the western edge of the North American Craton. and we can see that kicking up here within the Wyoming area. 3.3 near, what is that, Bear Oil? Is that right? Probably not. It doesn't sound right. Maybe. We'll see. See how many people slaughter me tonight for the mispronunciation. But either way, low activity inland, folks. I would definitely say. As far as Yellowstone National Park goes, let's check this area out real quick. That earthquake that we see here on the map is going to be the three-pointer in Stanley, Idaho, or near Stanley, Idaho, around the Sawtooth Fault system, showing up pretty significantly and nicely across the northwestern corner of the park. Less so over here, though. As you notice, it's not as prominently featured across the seismograph stations themselves. So the earthquake of that size, though, will definitely show up. 3.7 in Stanley. Pacific Northwest, getting a lot of quarry blasts throughout the valleys out there, or into the Washington region. But as far as earthquake activity goes, most of it has been light and consisting of just some microquakes around Mount St. Helens and also down south into Oregon around Mount Hood. Looks like there's an earthquake, another earthquake or so since this morning's update. We'll check out that graph here in just a little bit. Scooting down south into Northern California, some activity. This was overnight and this morning time frame. No renewed activity to report along that area of the Cascadia. And looking at California, we're filling in a little bit around the plate boundaries, right? We're filling in just a little bit here into the central part of California, and right around the San Leandro area, got a 2.0 on the Calaveras Fault Zone, and also over here around the Hayward Fault Zone, we had a little earthquake as well. That looks like a 1.6. So these are some major players in relieving stress and also accumulating stress in terms of earthquake plate tectonic stress and pressure in this area. The plate boundary itself, the San Andreas Fault, yes, that builds up quite a bit of stress, but got to remember these other fault systems run pretty much parallel with the plate boundary, and they do build up stress inland as well. Eastern Sierra Nevada, pretty quiet. Once you get south here of the Garlock Fault shear zone, we have been noticing a little bit of swarming down here on a separate fault system, the San Jacinto Fault Zone. And that is that's another player down here. It's a pretty lengthy fault system that runs, just north of the Baja California region, Mexicali, all the way up north, almost to the San Andreas Fault. A lot of people say, well, this might be the new plate boundary because of the lack of activity here along the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault. But I think we're a way off. We're a ways off from announcing that that's a possibility at all. Yes, it is pretty active, but there has been strain building up. We know it. GPS stations show it. And, 8.1 earthquake is in the future, no doubt, for this area of the San Andreas Fault. But for now, some swarming going on along the San Jacinto Fault Zone, the Borrego Springs area. Look at that. Pretty good earthquake cluster of 26 earthquakes over the last 24 hours. Right down here on the southern segment of the San Jacinto Fault Zone. Also up north here, get a little activity as well around the Santa Rosa Mountain areas. Santa Rosa Mountain area, looks like. And a new little swarm, looks like at least a couple earthquakes kicking up here within the last hour, a 2.5 and a 0.6. And that is, again, on the San Jacinto Fault Zone. So let's go ahead and take a look at the info on the Caltech website here. This is the Southern California Earthquake Data Center. Pretty useful website. And it's got a lot of info in regards to the fault systems out here in the California region. So the San Jacinto Fault Zone is kind of what we're after right now. Just kind of get a little view of what's going on here. It is a pretty lengthy fault, and there's a couple different segments that it breaks down to. So the one that we're kind of looking at down here is the Coyote Creek fault system, and that's going to be this one right here. But first, we'll go up here. It's a right lateral strike slip, minor right reverse in certain areas. It is 210 kilometers long, pretty lengthy. That including the Coyote Fault section. Most recent surface rupture within the last few centuries looks like April 9th 1968, there was an M 6.5 earthquake on the Coyote Creek section, and that's kind of what the one that we're looking at right now. Slip rate is pretty high. That's the accumulated slip rate, 7 and 17 millimeters per year. That's somewhat high for this area. And the intervals between surface ruptures, roughly between 100 and 300 years per segment. Probable magnitudes between 6.5 and 7.5 on the scale there. So the Coyote Creek section, it's 80 kilometers long, and it looks like there's that mention of the earthquake back in 1968 in M6.5 on the southern half. And this separate area accumulates between 2 and 6 mm per year, possibly greater. Ruptures between 100 and 300 years, and of course probable magnitude 6.5 and 7.5. And these are all pretty much, you know, is it 100% solid in concrete? Not necessarily, but these are just basically ideas and observations that geologists make in terms of, you know, what's going on out here along these fault systems. So right now, there's definitely a pretty good swarm down around the Borrego Springs area, so we got to watch that pretty closely, right? If you think regionally, okay, look at the San Jacinto Fault Zone as a whole, you got a lot of pressure here coming in from the North American Plate and the Pacific Plate boundaries, the interaction between them two. This is already a very sensitive area, a lot of built-up strains separately here along this plate boundary. Over 300 years since we've seen a major rupture along this southern segment of the San Andreas Fault, and there's talk of an 8.1 magnitude earthquake in its future, and I think that's pretty reasonable considering the slip rate and the lack of release of pressure in 300 and something years. So it builds up. I can't remember the exact feet accumulated stress that has built up on here, but man, it's been building. So with all this activity along the San Jacinto Fault Zone, can't help but wonder the regional pressure that's going on down here in Southern California. We got three separate swarming areas here just to the west of that southern segment. So got to watch that pretty closely. Who knows what it's going to take to trigger the big one. You know, everyone could say, oh, you're fear-mongering, you're fear-mongering. You know, someone yells the sky is falling. You're fear-mongering. You know, until it actually happens, then they kind of shut up and just go away. But we definitely have to watch this pretty closely. Southern segment. Any type of swarming, I think, within about 50 miles of this southern segment is worth noting and watching out, keeping an eye out. So we'll watch it, right? That's all we can do. Is a big one going to happen? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball here in front of me. No one knows, but swarms around a major area? Yeah, come on. That's not fear-mongering at all. Okay, back east. Well, let's see. What do we got here in Texas real quick? Or Texas? When did Texas move out west? No. If I'm going to move to Texas, I better not be heading back out west. A little bit of activity throughout the Tonopah region and, as I mentioned, along the eastern Sierra Nevada, but not a whole lot of movement as far as large-scale activity goes here currently. Texas, one earthquake outside of the Pecos, Texas area, and Oklahoma got some activity as well. Got one earthquake up in the Turley, Oklahoma area. Looks like north of Tulsa. Not for sure what's out there. Shall we look? Let's go ahead and take a look, guys. Well, obviously some residential areas, and this earthquake is underneath what looks like some type of business out there, 10 kilometers deep. Now, I'm not for sure if there's been some older fracking operations or injection wells out here prior to this development. It's possible, but yeah, you never know, right? They kind of cover it up, erase the tracks of the fracking and injection wells and oil pumping operations, and cover it up with new development. So we don't know. You know, that as far as fault systems go up here, it's possible there could be some, but it's kind of an odd earthquake. 1.8 shown up there on the map. One earthquake out here around the New Madrid zone, a 2.2. That one coming in earlier this morning time frame. Eastern part of the country, pretty quiet, folks. Not a whole lot going on out there for you folks in South Carolina. The Puerto Rico area, most of this activity, older movement, couple 2s, couple 3s throughout this area. South America, pretty quiet right now. Nothing going on for the 4.0 and above. And if you really look here across the Western Pacific, this is almost unheard of in terms of lack of activity. Yes, there is some 2s and 3s. I'm sure that the EMSC is reporting. Let's go ahead and check that real quick. Let me bring up the EMSC model here. But when it comes to the USGS reporting the 4.0 and above, man, there's not a whole lot. Let me tell you. EMSC agreeing with the USGS here. Looks like there was an earthquake being reported in Chile about 4 minutes ago. Not for sure on the magnitude. It was a felt earthquake, it looks like. But nothing really showing up on the map. Earthquake possibly felt in the Chile area. But it doesn't say the magnitude at all, so we'll see what comes up with it. But either way here, bringing up these smaller magnitudes here by zooming in, we do have some activity around the Philippines, south and north, and also throughout the Indonesia area, and some activity in the 3 and 4 range. We did have 4.9 here. I believe I've seen that one on the USGS map, but there's some 3s out here as well around the New Zealand area. Looking at the South America region, quite a few 2s and 3s up and down the region there, and the Middle America Trench. But this is all very common. It's almost always active along these major subduction zones. What is missing here is areas around the Vanuatu area, Solomon Islands, and the Fiji area. That's not showing any type of activity whatsoever there. So I think right now that teeter-totter effect putting a lot of stress on the North American plate up against the North American Craton region, kind of squeezing these areas in between, and it makes sense. So watch that West Coast pretty closely, just because we're not seeing a whole lot of large-scale activity along the major plate boundary. I think the stress is there along the West Coast right now, considering the swarms that we're seeing down south and the ultimate inland activity kicking up well inland up against the North American Craton here. All right, tremor map tonight. See what we got for the tremor activity. 66 into Northern California, southern end of the Cascadia. That's kind of been an ongoing deal here for a couple days now or so, actually about a week or so. Most of the activity been confined here to southern segment of the Cascadia, Northern California region. Let's see what else we got here. Tau, American Samoa, still sits at the yellow advisory level. I'm not for certain if they got any current data stations up here as far as the new equipment they put in. But we can still go to the Raspberry Shake data viewer. Wow, look at that one. Oh, man, hold on a second here. I think this is a little bit over amplified. Bring this down just a tad bit. Goodness, that was a little chaotic looking. So this is the seismograph stations here of the Tau Volcano, American Samoa, the Manua Islands area. And some of these earthquakes here, they look a little bit bigger than what we've seen in the past. Specifically this one here around the 1630 time frame, and a couple up here as well. Not for sure on their exact magnitude, but they have been getting some 2s and 3s in the area. So I can only assume those are probably around the 3 magnitude range or slightly higher around the Tau Volcano. So this is increasing in the multitude and magnitudes of earthquakes here. And that's something to watch for a possible impending eruption. It kind of leads to it, right? So we'll watch that pretty closely. There is some smaller earthquake activity in the mix here. Every single one of these blips that you see, if you bring them up, they will show you that those are earthquakes. And they may not be bigger than the ones that are prominently seen here across the graph, but they are earthquakes nonetheless. So we definitely got to keep that into consideration in this ongoing swarm. But for now, everything remains pretty much about the same, except for a little bit of increase in activity in the area. What do we got going on here? 2.5. That one just came in, right? No, that's kind of been up on the map for a little bit there in the San Jacinto Fault zone. So, space weather is another event we're kind of watching, getting quite active in terms of solar flare activity currently. Had a couple M flares pop off here over the last 24 hours. Largest one in M1.8. And another smaller one there earlier this afternoon as well. We are still very elevated in terms of the X-ray flux data coming in, and this is kind of like popcorn popping on the getting ready. Well, I should say it's getting ready to pop on the stove or the microwave in the microwave bag. I don't know. I kind of like the microwave popcorn. It's pretty good, but it's sizzling and it's sitting there steaming and cooking. And it's about ready to pop. That's kind of what I see here on this map. So watch these flares pretty closely. Sunspots are getting pretty active. And right now there's a 75% chance of a C flare, 20% chance for an M flare, and 10% chance for a X flare from these sunspots that are now kind of facing towards us. We're still looking at this bad boy in the center of this coronal hole. Kind of neat to look at, but it's not really doing much. Most of the activity that we need to watch here is from these two sunspots, who have a little bit more dynamic flux in their magnetic fields, and I'm talking about 3088, 3089, 3086 is the one sitting in that coronal hole. Not for certain if that's going to do anything spectacular. Another sunspot up here, 3085. So we got pretty much 3 sunspots right now that are possibly going to produce a good size M flare here pretty soon. Right now, far as the threat goes, the geomagnetic forecast, it's all green across the board. KP index pretty lowered. Talking about solar weather conditions, very minimal right now in that aspect of things. But if we get one of these sunspots popping off a good CME in this direction, then that will be a different story. So right now, I think the main sunspots, 3088, it's got a beta class field, it looks like. I believe all of these do. That one as well. But if you want to look at the more closer dynamics of these, you want to look for these color differences and how close they are together. You can have a huge red area of the magnetic field and the blue over here with a lot of separation and not really produce too much of a huge magnetic solar flare threat. It's when you get these colors very close together, intermixing with each other, and producing these different types of magnetic fields that pose a larger threat for a flare is an area that we need to watch out for. So I think right now, this one down here, I believe is the main threat. Although this one's kind of, it's hard to say, folks. We got 3 areas we need to watch. Earlier this afternoon, we had 3088 and I believe it was 3089 popping off flares at the same time. It may have been 3087. No, 3087 is right here. So these two popping off flares at the same time is pretty cool to watch earlier. And it looks like they're getting ready to cook. Again, they're pretty bright, getting ready to spark off some fireworks, so to speak, with this elevated solar data coming in. So watch it pretty closely, folks. Of course, if anything does happen drastically, we will provide an update here on this channel. Also, by the way, do want to give a quick shout out to all the channel members that have joined here on the channel. And those are the folks that have, well, joined up on the channel and get kind of perks and whatnot here. And we do want to announce, or at least show a couple names here. Let me bring this back up and show you guys. As we got Dolores. She's been a member here for the channel for about 3 months. She's recently rejoined, so there's no commitment. You can join for a month and cancel if you wish, or you can continue your membership here. Ashley, thanks for joining as well. We got Ann, Pamela, Judy, Lainey, John, Robbie 82, Patrick, Chris, Hurricane Heather, thanks for checking in. Betty, Kelly, Purple Bullet, Nancy Kozlowski, Maria Park, John, Debash Mode, Joel, Alicia, Mike, Melanie, Catherine, Pamela, Ray, Hope and Feathers, Robert, two Roberts there, some longtime members there. The Fly Lady, Jay Fuentes 347, and Albert Sanchez. Some of these guys, some of our top longest lasting members right there, and I appreciate you guys 100%. These guys, of course, are automatically entered into monthly drawings, which is pretty cool. We already did ours for this month. Congrats to Nancy for that. Her one. She won $40 Amazon gift card, and of course we'll do one next month as well. Kind of figuring out what I'm going to do. Maybe give out some free merchandise, a hat, or who knows what. We'll see how it goes. A lot of ideas floating through my head right now, but appreciate all those guys up there on the membership channel 100%. Also, by the way, if you didn't catch my announcement earlier on the post on YouTube, I kind of asked Missy Mimi's to well, marry me. You know, she would be my girl, and she said yes. We've been kind of dating for, just a little quick background, we've been kind of dating for about a year or so, and you know, she's one of those girls that I can get along with. We share the same hobbies, the same interests, the same studies and whatnot in school, and you know, I really can't help but think of any other girl I would want to be with for the rest of my life aside from Missy Mimi. So, you know what? I asked her to marry me, and she said yes, so I'm pretty happy about that. And again, thank you for everyone out there for the congratulation remarks. It's very meaningful, and I appreciate it from everyone. I've seen all your comments, all of your comments, and there was a lot, so I do appreciate it. And yeah, I'm pretty happy, and I can't wait for that day. And yeah, she's a beautiful girl, and I do love her. 4.3 earthquake, it looks like, here into the Fiji Islands area. Not for sure when this earthquake came up here, but man, is that a deep earthquake. It looks like it just came in just recently here within the last 20 minutes. That is 626 kilometers deep, folks, for that 4.3 into the Fiji Islands area. We're just talking about how this has been awfully quiet. That is a super deep earthquake, and that could get things rolling, get the ball rolling here along the western Pacific once again, up against the Philippine Plate and the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench. So we'll watch these areas pretty closely. But I still think we need to watch the West Coast with this inland increase in activity. But until we see some further development, 4.3, not a huge earthquake, but it is deep, and that can add some stress up here along the Tonga-Kermadec Trench and areas up around the western Pacific Plate. But also watch the North American Plate with all this back building of pressure. And we'll see how it goes, folks. All right, guys, have a good night. Stay safe out there, and we will chat you guys another time. Have a good one. Peace out, folks.